Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're stepping into the shadowy history of Borley Rectory. It's this place in Essex, England,
Right.
that got this really dramatic title, the most haunted house in England.
Yeah, a label largely thanks to the psychic researcher Harry Price, wasn't it? Definitely catches your attention.
Absolutely. It was built way back in 1862. Didn't last forever, though. Fire in 39, demolished by 44.
And our goal today really is to dig into all of that. The history, the ghost stories people told, Harry Price's investigations, which are key, and then, crucially, the skepticism. The accusations that maybe it wasn't all real.
Exactly. We're on a mission, you could say, to figure out if Borley was genuinely haunted or, well, maybe something else entirely. A bit of an illusion.
Precisely. And we got some interesting sources lined up, timelines, ideas for exploring the story visually, even a blog giving a personal take.
So get ready. We're going to unpack this whole thing, look at how that haunted house story really took shape. It's quite a ride.
Okay, let's start at the beginning, setting the scene. So the rectory we're talking about, built 1862, it actually replaced an older one that burned down in 1841.
Ah, right.
And it was built for Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull. He had a pretty large family.
And, almost every good ghost story seems to have some kind of old legend attached, doesn't it? Something to give it that spooky foundation.
Definitely.
For Borley, it's this tale of a 14th century monastery, a monk, a nun, a secret love affair.
The classic forbidden love story.
Yeah. And the legend says it ended badly, monk executed, and the nun, well, they supposedly bricked her up alive in the convent walls.
Yeah, that's incredibly grim. Adds that gothic horror element for sure. But it's really important, and our sources point this out, that legend was pretty thoroughly debunked back in 1938.
So no actual monastery records or anything?
Nope, no real historical evidence. Some even think the rector's kids might have just made it up.
Right.
Romantic story,
Shows how a good dramatic story, even a fake one, can really stick to a place, right?
Really?
Plays into what we want to believe sometimes.
Exactly. It feeds that narrative.
Okay, so maybe the monk and nun story is bunkum. But weird things were reported pretty early on, weren't they? Like almost right after it was built.
Yeah, surprisingly early. Around 1863, locals remembered hearing footsteps in the house, unexplained ones.
Just footsteps at first.
Seems like it. Then, fast forward to 1900, and things get a bit more visual. 4 of Reverend Bull's daughters said they saw a nun, a ghostly nun, at twilight near the house.
A nun, okay, tying back to the legend, maybe, in their minds.
Possibly. And the local organist apparently backed them up, saying the family really believed they were seeing things, apparitions.
And it didn't stop there, did it? Over the next, 40 years?
No, the stories kept coming, even got quite elaborate tales of a phantom coach, headless horseman driving it.
Headless horseman, wow.
Right. Then Reverend Henry Bull, they called him Harry, he took over from his father, died in 1927. And after that, the place stood empty for a bit.
Setting the stage for the next act, I suppose.
Exactly. Which brings us to 1928. Enter Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife.
And they move in, and almost right away, trouble.
You could say that. Mrs. Smith finds something pretty disturbing in a cupboard, a skull, a young woman's skull.
Oh, wow. Just finds a skull.
Apparently so. And that discovery is often pointed to as the moment things really ramped up. The paranormal activity, supposedly.
Okay, so what kind of activity?
Well, servant bells ringing on their own, lights appearing in windows when no one's there, those footsteps again. And Mrs. Smith, she thought she saw that ghostly carriage, too.
Okay, I can see why they'd be freaked out. What did they do?
They contacted the Daily Mirror newspaper, hoped the paper could put them in touch with the Society for Psychical Research.
Ah, the SPR. And that leads us to...
Harry Price, June 1929. The Mirror sends a reporter, and they bring Price along.
The famous ghost hunter arrives. And what happens? Does it calm down?
Quite the opposite. Almost the second Price walks in, the phenomena apparently go nuts.
Like how?
Stones getting thrown, a vase flying across the room, objects moving, and supposedly spirit messages started tapping out from a mirror frame.
Seriously? Tapping messages?
That was the claim. But here's the really interesting bit. As soon as Price left,
it stopped.
It stopped. Dead silence.
The timing is, let's say, convenient.
Very convenient. Especially when you consider Price's background. He was a known conjurer, an expert in stage magic.
Right, so Mrs. Smith must have put 2 and 2 together.
She certainly seems to have. She suspected Price was faking it, pulling tricks.
Given his skills, you can see why she'd think that. Did he have specific tricks known for that kind of thing, like object throwing?
Well, conjurers use misdirection, hidden wires, maybe accomplices,
Yeah.
things like that. We don't know exactly what Mrs. Smith thought he did, but the fact it all started and stopped with him, it's a big red flag.
Yeah, it really is. So the Smiths didn't stick around long after that, I take it.
Nope. They were out by July 1929. Understandably, maybe. Finding someone else to live there wasn't easy.
I bet. Who would want to move into a place with flying vases and a potentially dodgy ghost hunter?
Took until October 1930. A Reverend Lionel Algernon Foister, who was actually a cousin of the Bowles, moved in with his wife Marianne and their adopted daughter Adelaide.
And this is when the Borley Rectory story really blows up, right? Becomes nationally famous.
Absolutely. This period, the Foister residency, is peak Borley Rectory legend, the time that really cemented its reputation.
What were they reporting? Must have been intense.
Oh, it sounds like it. Reverend Foister kept detailed notes, sent them a price. We're talking bells ringing again, windows smashing, objects thrown, wall writing appearing.
Wall writing? Like messages?
Apparently so.
Huh?
And poor Adelaide getting locked in a room, no key.
Jeez. And what about Marianne? You hear a lot about her experiences.
Yes, Marianne reported some of the most dramatic stuff, being physically thrown out of bed, poltergeist attacks, she called them. You know, things flying around, loud noises, even feeling like she was being hit.
Thrown from bed? That's terrifying.
And Adelaide was apparently attacked, too, by something horrible. Foister tried exorcisms twice. The first time, he got hit by a stone.
Hit by a stone during his own exorcism. It's almost darkly comical.
It sounds completely chaotic, and the Daily Mirror. They lapped it up. All this coverage brought tons of other paranormal researchers to Borley.
Okay, so lots of witnesses, lots of activity. But there were doubts, even then.
Yes. A common suspicion started brewing among the other investigators. They began to wonder about Marianne. Was she involved, consciously or maybe unconsciously causing some of it?
The focus shifts to her. What happened there?
It's complicated. Marianne later admitted some things were faked by her husband or one of the researchers helping out.
Okay, so some fakery confirmed.
But she also insisted other things felt totally real to her, genuinely paranormal. However, the big blow to her credibility came later. She confessed to having an affair with a lodger, a guy named Frank Perlis. And she admitted she'd used the haunting sometimes, well, as a cover story, to explain noises or her being somewhere she shouldn't be, you know, during her liaisons.
Wow. Okay, that definitely changes things. Suddenly the motive isn't just attention, maybe.
Right, it adds a whole other layer of potential deception. That confession really damaged the whole Foister narrative.
Understandably. So how long did they stay?
They left in October 1935. Reverend Foister's health was failing. The place was empty again.
Until Harry Price comes back onto the scene.
Exactly. In 1937, Price makes a big move. He rents Borley Rectory himself for a whole year.
Rents it? Why? To investigate full-time.
Pretty much. He recruited a team of 48 official observers, mostly students, to stay there in shifts and record everything. Anything unusual.
Like a big paranormal stakeout. The human laboratory idea.
That's the one. A really ambitious project for its time, trying to get loads of eyewitness data.
But critics would later say maybe those student observers weren't the most objective, influenced by Price, maybe.
That was definitely a criticism leveled later, yeah. Were they seeing what they expected to see? Hard to say.
So what came out of this year-long observation? Any big revelations?
Well, some very specific claims emerged. There was a planchette seance held in London, not even at the rectory itself.
What's a planchette? Like a Ouija board kind of thing.
Sort of, yeah. It's a little device, often heart-shaped, sometimes with a pencil, used for automatic writing in seances. Helen Glanville, whose father worked with Price, conducted it.
And they contacted someone?
Allegedly, yes. A spirit calling herself Marie Lair claimed she was a French nun.
Ah, the nun again.
Right. And she supposedly had this tragic backstory, murdered on the rectory grounds centuries ago after trying to marry someone from the local Waldegrave family. Her body, she claimed, was hidden in the cellar or maybe a well.
And the wall writing, like, Marianne, please help me get out.
That was attributed to Marie Lair, supposedly her pleas from beyond.
Okay, so they get this specific nun story. Anything else from the seances?
Yes, another supposed spirit calling itself Sunex Amures. This one made a prediction.
Oh, what kind of prediction?
Claimed the rectory would burn down. Specifically, 9 p.m., March 27th, 1938. And when it burned, the bones of a murdered purser would be found.
Whoa. Okay, did burn down on that date?
No, not on that exact date. But the prediction of fire? Well, that turned out to be strangely accurate, just a bit delayed.
How so?
February 27th, 1939. About a year later, the new owner, Captain Gregson, was moving things around. Accidentally knocked over an oil lamp, remember, no gas or electricity there, and boom, big fire, badly damaged the rectory.
Just an accident.
Or, well, officially an accident. But interestingly, the insurance company apparently had suspicions. They thought it might have been deliberate. Arson.
Another layer of intrigue. Did anyone see anything ghostly during the fire?
There was a claim. Miss Williams from nearby Borley Lodge said she saw the nun up in an upstairs window clear as day during the blaze. Yep. Although, she also apparently asked Harry Price for money for her story. So, make of that what you will.
Right. Always follow the money sometimes. Okay, so the place is fire damaged. What about the bones prediction?
That comes later, August 1943. Price goes back to the ruined rectory, starts digging in the cellars.
And he finds
2 bones, small ones, believed to be from a young woman, seem to fit the Marie Laire story perfectly.
Wow. So case closed, bones found, story confirmed.
Not quite. The local church, Borley Parish, refused to give the bones a Christian burial.
Why not?
Local opinion was apparently pretty skeptical. The common view was they were just animal bones. Pig bones, some said.
Pig bones. Oh, dear. That's less dramatic.
Considerably. Eventually they were buried, but in the next village over, Liston. Kind of a quiet, contested end to that part of the story.
Which neatly brings us to the big wave of skepticism, really taking hold after Price died in '48.
Exactly. That's when things really started to unravel publicly. Charles Sutton, a Daily Mail reporter, came forward.
What did he say?
He flat out accused Price of faking things. Said he'd visited back in 1929 during the Smiths' time and actually found stones in Price's pockets, the same kind that were supposedly being thrown supernaturally.
Stones in his pockets. Ouch. That's pretty damning if true.
Yeah. But the biggest hit came in 1956 from the Society for Psychical Research itself, the SPR.
The same organization the Smiths tried to contact originally. What did they find?
They published a huge investigation known as the Borley Report. It's quite famous in paranormal circles.
And their conclusion?
Their conclusion was that Price had faked some phenomena, fraudulently produced it.
Wow. The SPR accusing the most famous ghost hunter of fraud. What was their evidence based on?
Inconsistencies in what witnesses said, the fact that so much activity seemed only to happen when Price was involved or directing things, and just a lack of solid, independent proof. They basically argued Price manipulated the evidence.
So what did they think was happening, if not ghosts?
A lot of it, they said, was probably natural stuff. Rats in the walls making noises, weird acoustics in the old building. You know, things that sound spooky but aren't.
Okay, natural explanations. And the rest?
Outright fabrication, either by Price himself or... They pointed fingers squarely at Marianne Foister, too. Said she was actively making things happen, hoaxing.
Right. Terrence Hines famously said Price salted the mind, didn't he? Like planting evidence.
Exactly. That phrase really stuck, just faking events to make the place seem haunted.
And Marianne. Did she ever respond to those SPR accusations?
Well, later in life, she pretty much admitted she never actually saw any ghosts, no apparitions. The noises, she put them down to the wind, maybe friends playing jokes on them, or even her own practical jokes on her husband Lionel.
Practical jokes. So some of it was just her messing around.
Seems like it, according to her later statements.
Yeah.
Which fits with the SPR findings.
And didn't the children of the original rector, Reverend Bowl, also speak out?
Yes. The ones who lived there before all the major drama with the Smiths and Foisters, they basically said they never saw a thing, nothing paranormal. They were apparently quite surprised when the rectory got this huge haunted reputation.
Kind of throws cold water on the whole haunted from the start idea.
It certainly complicates it. Now, it's fair to say some researchers did defend Price. They argued against the fraud accusations.
There was some pushback.
Oh, yeah. People like Peter Underwood, Ivan Banks, they tried to rehabilitate Price's reputation, but later SPR reviews, like one in 1997, basically said those defenses didn't really hold up against the original criticisms. They weren't convincing rebuttals.
So the weight of evidence, especially from the SPR, leans heavily towards hoaxing and natural causes.
That seems to be the consensus among critical investigators, yes.
Okay, so the rectory itself is gone, demolished in 1944. Is that the absolute end of the story?
Almost. There's one last weird little anecdote. A photo taken during the demolition supposedly shows a brick floating in midair, levitating.
Seriously, a floating brick?
That's the story. Those cynics, as our blog source hints, suggest maybe it was Price trying for one last bit of spooky publicity. a final illusion.
Huh. A floating brick.
Okay, and even with all the debunking, all the evidence of fakery, the idea of Borley Rectory, it just won't die, will it? The debate continues.
It's amazing, isn't it? Why do you think that is? What made Borley such a landmark case?
Well, it really forced paranormal research to get more critical, I think. It showed how easily anecdotal evidence can be misleading, how vital proper investigation methods are. You have to consider fraud, bias, everything. It pushed for more rigor.
So it was important for how people investigate these things, even if the haunting itself wasn't real.
Arguably, yes. And its influence is still there. You mentioned films being made recently.
Yeah, 2017 and 2021.
Yeah.
Shows it still captures the imagination.
Definitely. What do you think keeps people hooked, despite all the evidence pointing away from ghosts?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Maybe. Maybe it's just a cracking good story. Gothic setting, mysterious nun, dramatic events, a famous investigator, scandal. It has all the elements. We love a mystery, even a debunked one.
That's probably a big part of it. The narrative is just so compelling.
So we circle back. Haunted house or massive hoax. The evidence really does seem to stack up against genuine haunting, doesn't it? Fraud, misinterpretation, outright lies.
It certainly looks that way based on the critical reports and leader confessions.
Yes, the story endures. That fascination remains. It really does leave you, the listener, with that haunting question. You've heard the claims, the investigations, the skepticism. What do you make of it all?
And maybe here's a final thought to mull over. Could the sheer intensity of the investigation, the expectation, the belief focused on that building, could that itself have somehow shaped things, created phenomena, maybe psychosomatically, or just through heightened awareness, regardless of the initial spark?
Ooh, that's interesting. Like the observation changed the experiment, in a way. Definitely food for thought. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the very strange, very tangled story of Borley.